Hello, and welcome to all of you beautiful soul sisters. Thank you for joining me here today on the Heart of the Soul podcast. My name is Amana, and I am so happy that you're here. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth. We connect through the ancient ritual of storytelling, sharing about that which is often unseen and unspoken. May soaking in these stories inspire you to harness your own innate knowing and center you into a more embodied, alive version of your beautiful, unique self. Today is Thursday, January 16th, 2025. At the time of this recording, our moon is currently waning towards a new moon in Aquarius on January 29th. I am honored and so excited to have Tamara McLellan here with me today through the cosmos. She is known as one of the Wild Sky Sisters, and I was first introduced to her beautiful soul by one of my soul sisters, Ashleigh, who bought me this incredible year ahead reading for 2024. And since then, I have had a transit reading with you guys, another year ahead reading. I have gifted your guys' readings to families and friends, and it's just, I love you too, and I am so delighted. Your readings, your energy, I remember feeling this like resonance with you from that first moment that I heard your voice in that reading in 2024, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm getting tearful. So oh, yes, you're muted now. Unmute yourself. And then I would love for you to then share a little bit about yourself in whatever way feels good. Now, I know you do many, many things and we have many similarities, but yeah, I'd love for you to tell people where you are in the world and a little about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amana. It's just so beautiful to be here in the live transmission. But the first reading I did for you, we sense the human. Obviously, we fall in love with the chart, and we fall in love with you sometimes before even seeing and meeting you. So I did exactly that, and now to be sitting here with you is just like the greatest honor. I am here in Lake Country, BC, Canada, so in the Okanagan Valley, and I do a couple of different things, but sort of my main gig, right, is Wild Sky Sisters. We run an ancestral astrology company or organization, which has grown out of the older work that I used to do within the nonprofit realm and wanting people to be really empowered and recognizing at a certain point in my life that the best empowerment starts right from within and being able to really see the way that we're meant to work with the world around us to live out our highest potential while also making lots of room for the humanness that we are. And so Wild Sky Sisters grew out of that and out of my biological sister and I running that together. And that has been, we're in our 5th year doing that. And then I also run a little side business that is also, really starting to make its way into a profound place in my soul as more of an expression of the artist within me. And with that, I do a lot of love work, couples work. I marry couples. So I'm a life celebrant. I do ceremonial work around self-marriage, around bringing people back into that sense of the inner wild and trying to really explore what and how nature and the cosmos are reflecting what is within us. And so in 2020, I built by hand a little cabin. And that experience opened me up to seeing how the mirror, the great shiny cosmic mirror, continues to play out in our personal lives. So I try to do a lot of workshops and, work at a lot of retreats and stuff that are outside. And when we're barefoot on the grass is probably where I'm doing my best work. I did a TED talk once, barefoot.
Yeah.
Their chagrin, I was like, I gotta be barefoot to do this. And it ended up being great. And yeah, and I write, and I'm in the process of publishing my first book. And it's like how can that be my first book? Because I've been thinking about it since I was 3 years old. So, with all that being said, my primary life's work is being the mama to my son, Onyx, 8 right now, and just, 80 in the soul. And teaches me everything.
Oh, my son had just turned 8 on the last new moon of 2024 on December 30th.
Oh, that's magical solar return for him.
Yes. So that's fun to imagine that they were like in the womb space at the same time you and I likely were holding our sons.
Absolutely. That is really extraordinary. It's such a special age. I mean, every age I'm like more and more in love with as we
Yes.
continue to go. But yeah, 8 is something really spectacular.
Oh, there's your kitty.
Well, your spirit, his name. Yeah, she'll be
Yeah.
here.
So, can you give me a little like how is ancestral astrology different from like mainstream astrology or some other types of astrology?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it is and it isn't. There
Yeah.
is so much about our charts that we can look at that is really looking at our childhood. You already get that when you get a reading often from your natal chart, is like being able to see everything, the whole family in the chart, your cousins, your siblings, your family, your mother, your womb-like conditions. It's all in the chart. And so the beginning of ancestral astrology is mirrored right in regular astrology, and being able to see those sort of conditions that were at your birth and also that will sort of resonate throughout the course of your life. Because obviously within those first 7 years, but the ancients really believed in the first 90 days of our life, we live what will then be the mirror of our entire sort of whole life.
Yes.
um, and and then with ancestral astrology, we go deeper into the chart and we start to look at family patterns of different planetary patterns among generations. So by the end of the time that we have a 6-month course, and during the end of that time period, we're starting to look at your great grandparents, all the way down to like your children and these 5 or 6 generations, and what similarities are running in the family degrees, what degree clumps. Like there's a bunch of people in my family who have certain planets and placements around 9 degrees of Taurus, for example. And it's like we all have a different role to play in that family line. And then we start to look at planetary patterns. So if you want to look at like, why is my family so creative? If we just want to look at that, maybe you would look at like Neptune in the family, and your mom has a moon Neptune conjunction and your dad has Sun trining Neptune, and then you have it square Neptune. So you're like, oh, I'm the only one who didn't get the creative gift, even though you did. In it, you're meant to manifest it in a different way. And there is this real essence with being able to sort of see these planetary patterns play out, that you recognize that it's not just your story. Your birth chart was a transit to your mother's chart, was a transit to your grandmother's chart. And the patterns that are coming through are not like siloed to just you, and another one is like, if you were looking at like in a really emotionally intense family, people who have a lot of like deep need to go into the deep, you might notice that there is like moon Pluto or sun Pluto configurations in their chart. Or you have a family of psychologists, and they're moon Pluto people. They're like, that's what we do well. And everyone has a role to play. So ancestral astrology is looking at the bigger tree chart, and it's basically making a family tree, but through the charts, and then tracking those lines and patterns down.
Yeah, very cool. During one of my readings with you, you talked about us sharing this like Capricorn moon to a particular degree. Is there anything, can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, and there is a piece where when you meet people who have the same moon sign as you, there is a soul family essence to them. The moon being so deeply the unconscious, the subconscious, the luminary that shines in the night, in the darkest of times, for the soul that is like our subconscious, unconscious self. And so
Mhm.
when that moon was in a certain part of the sky that archetypally we associate with, for us, Capricorn, but it could be any of the signs, right? That soul is coming through with the unconscious programming of that archetype. And we play it out in all kinds of different ways. But when it is concentrated like that, everyone you meet that has that moon sign, you're going to be like, there is an emotional resonance innately there. And
Yeah.
for us, when it's to the exact degree, it gets even more important. And you'll go through the same transits at the same time as that person, right? If the sun right now, today, Amana, you and I are meeting, and the sun is on our moon. Like, just that alone is sort of like, what? But we also went through Pluto on our moon at the same time. We would have went through Saturn on our moon. So this is also someone that I love to come closer to, because you're going to experience similarities. Everything else in the chart could be different, but you're still emotionally emoting different things with this person. And so you can get so much richness from that connection and so much soul understanding, and they can sort of act as that shiny mirror for you as well.
Yes, yes. So in 2025, I heard you say somewhere that there are 5 new moons in the ninth degree, and this is also like a 9 year that starts with this next new moon, right? So it's a 9 year, which is death, rebirth, energy, and 5 new moons in the ninth degree. What does that mean?
Yeah, and there's actually even more. There's a few Sun Mercury Cazimis this year as well, which is when the Sun and Mercury are lined up perfectly with the Earth. They come together in this conjunction with one another. It's called a kiss, like when they come together in that perfect formation. And they're also at 9 degrees this year. So the ninth degree and the number 9, I mean, really is about that level of completion and mastery and coming to the end of a journey before we embark. I mean, our boys will be 9 next year. It'll be their last year in single digits, right? And even just that is such a fun way to think of it. But when we're in that ending cycle, as this 2025 year is, that started back in 2017, which was the 1 year, it's like there is a chance this year over and over and over again to really get all the lessons. It's like, the spiral. It's like we're getting to the heart of the spiral so deeply. And I know we're all like, okay, I've gone through this already. I've gone through this already. Maybe over the last 9 years, you're like, okay, I've learned my lesson with this pattern. But this year does feel like one significantly where we really have a chance to end some of these lingering old patterns, so that 2026, which is a 1 year, we can really go into this year new. And this configuration of outer planets that are shifting this year is so new, like, and has not really, 300 years ago, there was the outer planets that were changing in signs, but this specific configuration of outer planets changing to new signs in 1 year's time is not really been done since we've recorded, astrological knowledge. So I think it's so new. I think we have to be so ready for completion, because the new energy is so new that we don't even know yet what it really means. And I keep thinking about it like, as in, even just seeing new shades of colors that we've never really seen. When you just like are like, whoa, I've never even seen that color before. Things are in new vibrations that we don't know yet. And we might even sit with ourselves this year and be like, okay, like, what do I need to wrap up? I've been talking about this book for too long. It's too long now. It needs to be wrapped up. And we
Yeah.
are a culture of like new too. So this is a great year to finally be like, hey, make the list, knock it off, because next year, baby, there's stuff coming in that we don't even know. Maybe there's like a new innovation. We won't read books, in the same, like, there's just so much that could come. So it's a good finishing year.
Yes. Okay. So you have your book right there. Will you or
Yeah, it's not
we're
quite
showing
ready.
different. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So read the title for us and tell me your inspiration and a little bit about it.
It's The Shark and the Sunshine. And the little like tagline is one woman's relentless quest for freedom. And I actually wrote this book well, I've been writing it my whole life. I've been living it my whole life. And everything that's sort of happened in my life has almost happened so dramatically to a comical and oftentimes excruciating degree that my father always took to saying to me, it's just another chapter in your book. That used to be our thing in my 20s and stuff. Something would happen, it'd be really big. I'd be moving through this girthy thing. And my parents would look at me and say, this is just another chapter in your book. Not to downplay it, but to say, like, it really helped me to reframe being so in some of the really devastating things that have happened in my life. And I always was like a chronic logger of things. I journaled since I was like, literally 5, wrote stories since I was 5. And so this book is a travel memoir. It goes through a lot of the sort of wild things that have happened over the course of my 20s. So it basically starts a little bit with like an introduction of who I am, and then gone through trips to Africa and India and Central America. And then I found out that I was pregnant on the morning of my 30th birthday in the Yukon. And that was the morning that I realized I needed to write it out for me. And in 2020 was when I actually wrote it all, was when we all went indoors. I went to my computer and I wrote and I wrote and I voraciously wrote 80,000 words in about 4 months. And it was the best therapy I've ever done. I'm like, no one even needs to read it. I'm done. The therapy is done. But it's about the duality that really lives within and has always lived within my life. So the shark is the part of me that really is, far deeper than I used to give credit to. In my 20s, I didn't understand the shark part of me. And I just denied her role.
Yeah.
And either tried to play good girl, tried to play sunshine, but didn't give her space to be who she was. And had a lot of things that came from that unconscious repression of that darkness or that, strength really that lived within me. And then, it was more entering motherhood, entering the role that I had to sort of stand into as a mother, that I was like, oh, I like her. And I think that she deserves a place to sort of come from too. And so this is my journey to finding solace in the shark, and to allow her to have a place to live, while also, talking about the sunshine that has really also always, I've just always really looked at life as such a gift. I'm so thankful to be here. People as an astrologer always say, what's your favorite planet? And I'm always like, Earth. So grateful to be on this planet at this time with these people beyond words. And so it's also just a celebration of like the richness of culture. And when we go outside our little spaces, up till 23, I had only ever went to the States. I had never left internationally. And at 23 years old, I got on a plane to Africa by myself and had no idea what I was doing. And that just opened up a whole different way of living for me. And so it's a celebration of that too.
Yes, yes, so many. I also did solo traveling myself in my 20s and 30s in other countries, and they were just some of the best experiences of my life. And I know many women will ask, like, you're so brave, like, how did you do that? And it's just like most things in life, I do things even though I'm scared. Like I'm fearful almost every time I like record a podcast and like publish it. It's not easy for me. I was definitely really hardcore into the good girl archetype and being quiet and all of these things. And it's taken time for me to find my voice and put myself out there. And it's such a journey. And also the both and, like, I also didn't know the term healthy aggression. Like you're talking about that shark energy. And I've heard you speak about like the lioness, like the mama energy, that as women, I often associated aggression with like is only negative. And yet I've learned that there is also this like positive side of aggression, and we need a healthy balance of it, and to be able to access that within us in certain circumstances.
Fully. And I really do think we're emerging into a new time when, and you see it in younger girls,
Mhm.
right now. And I'm like, finally, like we are entering into a time when these girls that I see that have mamas like you, and my sister has a daughter, and it's just the time has come for the solar feminine archetype to rise. And that's really what the shark and the sunshine is to me, is the solar feminine that allows us to have that strength and that protective stance. And to be honest, like, this is a part of how life is created. Life isn't created in just this like beautiful, it's like life. I mean, you've been at births. It's like birth energy, right? Is primal and strong and fierce. And that sacred ferocity is something that I finally allowed myself to just radically appreciate. And it's profound.
Yes. And there's the and so much growth and things happen in the darkness, like even thinking about our babies within our womb in the dark, and the seeds that are planted, that then their roots are going down and down before they're coming up into the light. And I saw on your website that you also work in the realm of death. And it sounds like you do sort of death celebrant work and grief work and walk alongside people, and those that are nearing death. That's something that I do as well. I worked as a palliative care nurse for a number of years doing it in that way. And now I do it in my own, form and offerings. I would love to know what brought you to working with death and walking alongside people in the death grief window.
I'm so thankful to know. Yeah, I think it's the Capricorn moon side of us that can really hold. Because it can be big. But to me it was always like just normal, like very normal, right? Yeah, I'm sure you can get on that. It's like it's just such a normal thing that we all do. And my sister and I, both very deep, both very philosophical. Even as children, we were known as the snake girls because we would like go to the cemetery, and they had these garter snakes, and we would put them around our neck, and we walk down to our house, and people around the little town that we grew up in Saskatchewan would be like, oh, it's the snake girls. And now I just find that so funny because I'm like, that's truly what we are. But we would always talk about death so much. My great grandmother died when I was 5, and it was the first time someone like lifted me up to see like a dead body lying there. And I remember that it was like one of my first conscious memories of going from this really like loving woman who was, oh, she would always give us stuffed animals or, stuff when we came to visit, to her being in this coffin. And I was like, oh, she's not there. Like, this is not her. Anyways. And so then it started all these like profound talks at such a young age, really, of like, what does death mean? And what, my sister and I would always, before we would go to sleep, talk about like who would be at our funeral and what songs they would play and how we'd want it to be such a thing of love. And just coming from that sort of like deep childhood talks of it, to me, it's such an precious time of life. And as I started to hear more about how to work with death as I got older, I would recall that. And when I was in high school, I had 3 grandparents die all within about 6 months of each other. It was a very sort of dramatic year and a half where it was just like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden the elders in my life, right? It was like the trees were falling. And my grandmother, who I am really close to, had a stroke, and we were in the hospital. And a lot of my aunties, I think, or just the climate was like, oh, don't let Tamara go in for too long, and this is too much or too hard for her. And when I went in and I sat with her and I held her hand, I remember being able to call in this strength that I didn't know I had. And I said, Grandma, you look more beautiful today than you've ever looked in your whole life. And I'll never forget um, that ability to just like find it in me to connect so deeply at such like what could have been a very scary time for a 14-year-old or whatever, right? um and it just always stuck with me. I was like, this is where I want to be in that threshold space with people, and I want to be able to normalize the conversations around it and help people who maybe can't, or who are scared. And as I started to grow as a meditation teacher, I really loved yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is the practice of death. I mean, it's the practice of being able to go into a state of letting go of the ego and letting go of the attachment of Tamara, the character, and going into those beautiful threshold spaces where we just are. And so all of that sort of combined. And in 2020, I took some formal training. Also, I think because during that time period, death was so feared.
Mm-hmm.
That
I
was
think
another
it
thing.
is right now, but it's something that I feel there's a shift happening too. But right
Yes,
now, it's death has been like sort of unspoken and pushed away, and yeah, don't let the children see. And
totally. And
Mhm.
in like when I was in Soweto, which is like a tiny town in South Africa, where Nelson Mandela lived, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and these sort of profound leaders of the resistance lived there, but it was also the highest spot for AIDS and HIV. And I had a sort of scare. People will now read about in my book, so I'll like actually talk about it a bit more openly. But I had a bit of a scare in South Africa, or in Zimbabwe, with someone around, like whether or not I would contract it.
Mhm.
And I had a doctor in South Africa look at me and say, "You're playing Russian roulette with your life." And there was like this moment of, what if I have it?
Mhm.
What if I die? What if I tried to do this big trip and I ended up doing this and instead I'm going to die? And I think once you sort of confront those moments, and you see in this town, like it's the threshold that they're all living on all the time. And so these incredible spirits were pushed to do life, to really live, because they came from this space of almost dying. It was like, and the whole town, like someone would die and the entire town would walk down the streets day in and day out for these funerals. And they would have mourners that would weep and wail. And that practice is a very big mourning practice all around the world in so many cultures, except for sort of prim and proper, North American cultures. And I just was like, whoa, we're doing something wrong here. Like when someone dies, I want to fall to my knees and I want to wail, because that's where the healing comes from. And when you hear someone wail,
Mhm.
oh, like the shared humanity in that grief, I think that's why like certain pieces of that, when we do get a picture of that, it goes viral now in our world, right? Because it's like someone is actually fully full bodied grieving.
Mhm.
And it's just it's just been like these moments where I'm like, that is what we need. I went to a Salt Spring Island wilderness training week too, and they had a grief tent there. And everyone was just allowed to go in, and this beautiful grief doula like opened the space, but it was just there. And it
Mhm.
had her space in it. You could, she would be around, but you just went in it to grieve. And as soon as you walked in, you were like, you just felt this allowance. And there was grown men falling to their knees and crying. And then they would walk out of there and they would do huge things with their days, right? Like when
Yeah.
we fully feel that, then we can fully open to the power of it. And I was like, man, we need a grief tent on every corner.
Yes. Yes. There's something about expressing grief in that full way without, apologies or just whatever is feeling good, that then for myself, it feels like it's allowed this other level of like joy and magic in life to come forth.
Every every winter solstice, right?
Mhm.
The sun's reborn.
Every
Every
24-hour cycle, it's like light and then dark. Like,
every night at sunset, we could grieve. And that would be great use of our energy, right? Like it's happening always in nature, and we've just become so void of it. And, like you said, I really see the tide turning. I see that we are embracing it. I see so much more of this wisdom coming back to us. So honoring that and really wanting to focus on that. And yeah, hoping that in 2025, we are going to have a landslide of Pisces energy in the sky. And Pisces is that end of life experience. And it doesn't mean like, massive death, but it does mean that we're going to all be hovering on the thresholds in our own lives in our own ways. And death can be letting go of our masks and letting go of, the protector persona that we've built up for so long in our life that stops us from being who we truly are. And there can be death in everything. And I think this year we will all be sort of at the doorway of death in our own lives and ways. And so to work with it as a full-blooded concept of what we need in order to move into the new birth is just so vital to me. So I actually can't work too much as a death doula right now, single mom life, and just, not being able to be there. But I bring it into my weddings a lot. I do a death ceremony the night before the people get married. I ask them to bring things of their bachelor life or, single life or their life up until that point. And we bury them and we have a funeral for who they've been and we honor it and we, mourn it in a way. A lot of the people I marry are like 40 and over. So it's like they are mourning a sense of their being. And then the next day we wake up and we marry them.
I love that. That is everyone should do that. I love that idea. That's so beautiful. Yeah. The rite of passage of, from being single to this marriage. And it is important too. I felt like I had to go through that same thing. Well, in my marriage and also from motherhood, from being the maiden into mother and letting go of the maiden and mourning her and who she was and embracing this next version of me as mother.
Well, and as a birth doula, I think birth doulas are death doulas,
Yeah.
full on, because it's like exactly the same process is happening. And I think too, for men during the birth process that they go through the death, but they don't get to see the death or be a part of the death as much. And so also helping and assisting them to have their own version of death and rebirth too, just so vital in so many areas of our lives.
Yes, I mean, tomorrow's guaranteed to no one. And like you're saying with birth, death is always in the room too, that no one is guaranteed whether you're at home or in the hospital. Like death happens. That I heard someone say once that we come to go, and sometimes the spirits come into our womb just for days or weeks and then they go. And sometimes, we birth them and they live into 100, but we all come to go. And I was also have been reflecting, my father-in-law just died this last December, this middle of December, and feeling into, and also might that mean that we go to return, like we go to come back? Because I do believe in my belief systems that we come back to this earth. And I would love to ask you, it's a question I ask everyone, of what does soul mean to you? And if you want to share anything about your beliefs of what happens to us when we leave our meat suits, our earthly forms.
Yeah, I see the soul as like the spark, the star, the light, the eminence, really like this eminence, this light that can never be put out. And that can often go in to light a human vessel for a time period, or as you said, maybe just a womb for a brief moment in time. And then maybe that light needs to go elsewhere. I sort of see the earth and maybe part of the universe is like fireflies. Like
Mm,
fireflies is the closest thing that I've ever seen to seeing that soul journey in the sort of night sky. It's just this movement of light that is happening. And um and I think that there are certain lights too. The more that I study astrology and soul contracts from the point of synastry, I see that there are, resonances of light that travel together
mm-hmm,
over and over in lifetimes.
mm-hmm.
And that it might be in different forms and ways that they do that, but there is this sort of eternal dance that definitely happens that you can see in charts, around the ways that these soul contracts come together. And my son is really teaching me so much about sort of the light of the soul. Really, he is so philosophical. And he also, I had a mentor, a very big grief mentor of mine, who ended up passing, and I thought, oh, this is the final test, to work with my grief around her passing. And my son only met her once when he was about 2. But I would breathe with her like every week when I was really struggling, with the family unit and trying to make sense of it all. So he had this deep connection with her, but he talks to her more than me, and he sees her more than me. And we always have a plate set out for her. Same with my maternal grandparents that he never met. And I'm like, oh, it's because like the eminence of their soul is within him so deeply, their light stay close to him. And I wouldn't be surprised at a certain point if that came in the physical realm through, who knows, right? Through his own children or through partners or whoever. But yeah, I just really see it as this eternal spark that can never ever be put out.
Yes, love that. What is feeling more true than ever to you in your life right now?
I well, there's a part of me that's like that we are on the brink of a new existence for humanity. That's
Mhm.
feeling more true than ever. That we
Yeah.
are coming to a time period where we are being like squeezed through the wormhole of something that is happening, that's coming through, that there, and in that it's like that there is never been more of a need for our artistic self-expression. To me, like the biggest truth of my life is that we all have a song to sing.
Mm.
And that more than ever will be essential to this new birth of humanity. And people will say there's a million other books out there, or there's a million other songs out there, or there's a million other paintings out there. And yet it's never been more vital in our life to paint our own pictures right now. Never. Um, and I just see it. I just think that we are like the luckiest people to be alive at this time, to be able to bring this into fruition alongside our sisters who are all around the world, and brothers, and alongside, this, technological revolution. It's So one of the things that has changed me so deeply in the last couple of years has been studying Bitcoin, which we can sort of talk about later. But it's actually been a reinforcing element to me that we are being birthed into this new existence through creator intelligence, and technology is in that, and our self-expression and the way we can bridge that with technology is of the utmost importance right now. So I am just so excited to see what comes over this next couple years, because to like, my favorite song in the world is this world choir where everyone's coming and they're all singing together, and it's like, doesn't matter if it's all different languages, it's all the same voice, it's all the same harmony. And we are
Yeah.
coming into this convergence of that. And I can feel it. I think like I can tell you can feel it, it's like there's something so exciting. So that is just the truer than true, is to remember that and to create and to, deeply like go down and in,
Mm-hmm.
find it. It's not up and out. It's not with the Pleiadians or even though there's help and there's love and everything, but it's like it's going down and in and primal and deep and getting close, belly on the earth. What are you here to pull out of that and then create into the world? And it's just so exciting.
Yes, yes. And
Tell me
remember,
what's truer than true for you. I want to know that for you. That's the greatest question I've ever been asked.
yes, I've been feeling this. Like, I remember first hearing about the like collective consciousness. I don't know how old I was, maybe in my 20s or something. And I'm like, that didn't even like mean anything to me. I didn't understand what that meant. And now here in my 40s, I'm 42 now, and I feel like I'm really I feel it in a more palpable, real way. And I feel this connection to sisterhood, to women, that we are like coming together, even like you're saying, like through technology, somewhat too, with the World Wide Web and being able to connect and share and express. And that storytelling is so important for me. It's been one of these ways that I wasn't, I didn't love, or wasn't that, I had to try really hard at like colonized education type of learning. But for me, receiving like learning and knowledge through storytelling, for me, that has just blossomed and bloomed in like the trueness and the necessity for me. One of my missions is like women's voices and women sharing what is true to them, and how that has like this ripple effect and can help us as a humanity. Like, I envision the world, I think it's so true and important that we envision the future that we are calling in and desiring, and rather than turning towards the focus of like the news and what's going wrong. um I don't know, I feel like I sort of went on a few different threads there, but
God,
it's
oh my gosh, it's so true. And the storytelling of these moments is honestly what makes me pause and take a breath, right? Because when we're out and in the stimuli of the world, it's like there's so much that is happening. But when we stop and drop in and just listen, like as I was just listening to you, I got so mesmerized by, like, I can see us at a fire, right? I can see us, and we can do that sort of astrally, as we're together, and be able to drop into that and feel you, and also bridge that with like the physical world. And it's like we're remembering ourselves home. We're telling the stories that are needed in order to knit ourselves back together as humanity.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. One thing that you do is your self-marriage ceremony, that you do it with your own, you have your own practice of it, but then you also facilitate other women marrying themselves. And I would love to hear more about this and when your next offering of this ceremony is going to be happening, if you have it on the calendar.
Yeah. Well, so um a couple of years ago, I'm trying to remember the year, but it doesn't matter. I felt so drawn to go to this one tree. I have this special tree that I would always bring offerings to, and my blood to. And then when I went to move, I buried a crystal with this tree and sort of left it as an offering. And a couple of years later, I felt this call after I had just conducted my first wedding formally, sort of as the officiant.
Mhm.
Um, and I ran back to that forest and I ran back to that tree. And I don't know why, but I was like, I need to dig this crystal back up. And when I dug it back out, it had been 3 or 4 years or something that it was under there. And I sat with it and I heard the words like self-marriage. And I think what I was trying to sort out in my psyche at that time was how to make marriage sacred again. um, just how to bring back an element to it that was sacred when religion is sort of not as involved in it now. And so how can we bring it back to something that is holy? And I was trying to sort out, this concept of weddings and the wedding industry, and that there is just so much emphasis on the Instagram pictures that you get rather than maybe the actual sanctity of relationship between two individuals who choose to dance really as one. And I wasn't really jacked when I started getting my officiant license. I was like, I don't want to marry a bunch of people that are going to get divorced. Like, that doesn't feel super good, but we know the stats say otherwise. And so anyways, I heard this self-marriage, and I just, it all sort of unfolded from there, and I just saw it happening. But it was like all of my grandmothers from time immemorial filed into that forest around me and just circled this tree. And as they were coming in, they were really looking at me like, it's been until this time that we've been able to choose, that choice of marriage truly is there for us to come together with another as a sovereign, equal partner. And I had experienced wedding, like I went to a wedding in Ahmedabad in India when I was there, and I'd experienced, so I at that time had really searched a lot around like love marriages versus arranged marriages, and how, just doing a lot of research into weddings back. I mean, they were all for status or who was meant to marry who. And really, this is the first century where we're able to choose that, where we're really able to decide we want to partner with another out of the full presence and love of our hearts. And what do we do when that evolves and changes? And it's okay also to like have divorce, but then, we need to destigmatize the dancing and the flowing of it. And so what I felt in that moment was my grandmothers were saying, like, the biggest piece is at the end of your life that you look in that mirror and you're able to say, like, I was here for you. Like, I have your back. And if you are so deeply with your roots in that integrity with self, your divine partnerships can come in the way that they're meant to for the time they're meant to. You can trust the whole process. Really, if you're not projecting on others, if you're not getting married for status or money or society or any, like, if you're really, truly so good here, then couplehood, that piece can come in and truly change humanity. And it might ebb and flow, but it won't be thought of in the same way. And so I imagined this golden ornate mirror at the base of this tree, and I walked around the tree. I did my own ritual of like doing this clockwise like dance that just sort of came and felt so natural. And I sat at the base of the tree with the offerings I had, which was really just, whatever was in my pockets, rings or something, and cedar that I had gathered. And I took vows to myself at that moment that wanted someone to say to me my whole life. And I said them to myself. And I've had, multiple relationships that have been very hard, and where I've looked for the other to say that and projected all of my stuff onto the other. And in this moment, it was like this coming home of certainty that I had my own back. And it was so profound. And so for a couple of years, I just sort of sat with it. I did Google it at one point because I was like, is this a thing? Like, I don't know. And so I Googled it. I was like, oh, there is like a thing. Yeah, it's a thing. Some people, again, like we as humans, we love to take things and, so there's like people who actually have like full ceremonies and invite people, like a wedding, right?
Yeah.
But isn't that just going back to like that old concept? So anyways, I decided this summer to do it at She Is Wild, a beautiful conscious women's festival. And it was my first time trying to facilitate something for others. And I had the women sort of dance their parts home, and in the dancing of their parts home, and we made room for all of it, like the inner addict, the inner narcissist, the inner stripper, like the parts of us that are fucking crazy and sensual. And I was like, those are the parts that I want to come home. You're not just marrying like the good part. No, that's why a lot of marriages break up. You're marrying the whole part. And we did this dance, and there was one woman in the festival who wasn't there for it. She was out in the forest, and she said, Tamara, you could hear the stampeding of bulls. She just said there was this vortex that was coming from the tent while you guys were in there. And I was just like, oh, it just lit me up from the inside out. And to have that sense of radical sort of self-responsibility and self-leadership that could therefore shift everything and create these super healthy, interdependent, and equal divine partnerships. I thought the only thing that could have been better at that festival was if there was a men's festival on the other side, and they got to come in and then hold the space and bring food and offerings and blessings to the women. And so I still envision that at some point. But I ran one indoors in November, and it was like my perfect sort of vision of love is like stained glass windows and the most holy jazz, sultry Nina Simone singing, moment, and candles and like candelabras, and just it was that. I was like, while we were there, I was like, who designed this? This is amazing. If I was to get married, this is what my marriage, like, this is what it would look like. And we had these women sit in front of the mirrors one by one and be witnessed just by one or two other women. We like made a, part cut off so that they could do it. And they spoke their vows in this holy sacred mirror to themselves. And as I was watching it, I was like, I will do this for, however long we need to do it. And so I have another one coming up in Lake Country in April 12th, which is a really important day. Venus stations direct on that day in Pisces, which is vows. And it's a full moon in Libra with Chiron and the sun together, which a full moon in Libra is really about our partnerships, and our partnerships this year are changing. And that sun Chiron piece is about healing the part of us that maybe either projects onto the other or doesn't, or retracts everything from the other. And there is a balance to be found in that. And so, yeah, that's coming up in April.
Yay. That's amazing. Yeah, when you're speaking, I was also like thinking back on my own, like first relationships where I really didn't know who I was, and, trying to be who I thought I should be or what other people wanted me to be. And then it was only, in my 30s where I really got to know me and what I wanted and who I was, to then be able to get in a more right relationship with the man who is now my husband.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. We had a 23-year-old there, which I was so enamored by, because I remember being 23 and being like, I have no idea. And then we also had a woman who was in her 60s and had been married 7 times. And so there's like all sides of it, right? So beautiful to just be able to come back to self and remember ourselves home in that essence.
Yeah, there's no one right path in life. Like,
there really isn't.
No.
There really isn't.
Yes. Well, I feel that we're coming to a close. Is there anything else you want to share before you then tell people where they can find you and about your podcast and all the things?
I don't think so. I think this has been such a beautiful chat. And like, time just went like that. I could talk to you forever.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for the work that you do and the love that you are, and that you just totally radiate outward. You can feel it. And that's the thing. That's the best use of the technology we do have, is to use it as that radio waves of your ability to spread love into the world. And we feel it from you. I feel it on your Instagram. I feel it here in the space. And so thank you so much for doing that.
Yes. Thank you. And yeah, I'll share links to everything you share now, but if you just want to also speak, I know you have two different Instagrams, one with your sister and one solo, and yeah.
Yeah, all of our astrology is over at wildsky sisters.ca and Wild Sky Sisters on Instagram. And our eclipsed portal is coming up. We run like an eclipse support group. We've been doing it this will be our 8th round. So that is a really fun way to sort of get to know us. It's a really quite accessible program for a lot of people to join. And it just helps to keep us anchored during these wild eclipses that are coming in March. And then over my personal account is Tamara Wild Breath, and wildbreath.ca is my website.
Yes. And then you also have a podcast, the Wild Sky Sisters podcast.
We do. Yes, we do. It's called The Inner Apocalypse. And the last one we recorded was actually a full look ahead at 2025. So if people are curious, they can go over there.
Awesome. Well, I love you. I love your work, and I will continue to invest in readings with you because they are so impactful. I love, someone had gifted me when I received your first reading at the end of 2023, the Wee Moon calendar. So my friend Ashleigh gave me the reading, and then my sister-in-law gave me the Wee Moon calendar. And so I loved listening to you and your sisters a year ahead and being able to go through and write little notes. And I have listened to your reading for 2025, and I haven't quite taken the time to write out my notes yet, but I will be, and I'm so excited for that. They're so helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot in it, and so it's like month by month, just sort of having a good understanding. And sometimes it's even just fun to look back at the dates and be like, whoa, that thing happened, and whoa, that thing happened, because it's always happening. It's always happening, and if we can consciously engage, sometimes it can be a little bit more smooth or flowy, but it's still always happening.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you again so much for your time. And it was so lovely to be with you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Heart of the Soul. I would truly appreciate if you might choose to leave a rating, review, or share the show with someone that you know. You can support this podcast by donating to it using the PayPal or Venmo links. If you have stories that you would like to share on The Heart of the Soul, please send me an email through my website. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me, I have both one-on-one and group offerings, online and in person. Find out more on my website, birthingnova.love. If you're listening on Spotify, you can now even send me a voice message. Until next time, remember, be brave, be love, be wild, be you, because you are the only you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Sending each of you so much love. Love, love, love. Mwah.